Hey everybody, how's it going? It is Wednesday, December 9th. Welcome everybody. Welcome to my guest, Hawley Woods Gray. So glad to have you here. This is really exciting to have you here tonight.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to spending some time with you all.
So tell us a little bit about you.
Well, my name is Hawley Woods Gray, and no, we're not related. We talked
The
all
names
about
are.
it. I know, look at how close our names are. So I live in Orange County, California with my husband and my 7-year-old son. We also have an older son who is 20. He's actually our nephew that we raised, and he is in the Navy. He's out in Norfolk, Virginia. I represent a company called Appreciation Financial. I've been with them for 9 years. So what we do is we help people save a lot of money, make a lot of money. We create life-changing wealth, and we get better every day. We primarily work with educators. So every day, my agents are on camera now with teachers and staff, showing them how their pension works and then providing products that fill their income gap. And the exciting news for me, Haley, is that I just published a book, and our book launches tomorrow.
Congratulations. That is pretty awesome. So what is this whole book?
Yeah, so my book is Push Through Your Ultimate Success Playbook. My co-author, Carrie Ukij, and I, we were both college athletes and college coaches for a number of years. And then we both moved into the financial services arena and have created successful and thriving insurance and financial services businesses. And so what we've been able to do is take what we learned on the court, on the field, in the gym, and all those traits and characteristics, we've been able to put them into practice for our business. And we find that many of those traits really translate into, especially entrepreneurship, because there's a lot of sports analogies that are very much the same as, entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. So what sports did you guys play?
I played volleyball and softball. She played basketball and volleyball. We both played volleyball in college, though. It's kind of funny. We were at a Women in Insurance and Financial Services conference about 4 years ago, and that's where we met. We were in this small group setting with one of our carriers that we both represent, and they asked us to go around the room and stand up and say something that is unique about us. And so Carrie had stood up and said she was a Division I volleyball player, and I'm like, it's not too unique. Someone else in the room had that same thing. So that's
cool.
meeting.
That's pretty cool. And that's just, it's not a sport that you hear a lot of people play.
Yeah, it's pretty popular here in Southern California, but across the rest of the nation, I guess Florida would be another place that it's pretty popular because of the beach volleyball aspect as well. But yeah, it's not as popular as basketball or soccer or some of those other sports that our women are really thriving in these days.
Cool. Yeah, no, it's interesting. My younger daughter is a 4th degree black belt in martial arts. So we've done our fair share of competing, but unfortunately that also knocked her out of being a D1 athlete because she was considered professional.
Oh yeah, there's that component too. Once you start getting paid in any sport, then, or even if you are paid to play, basically, whether it's money changing hands or them paying for like your training and whatnot, then you're no longer an amateur anymore.
Right. You're no longer eligible for NCAA. So we found that out the hard way.
Yeah. There is NAIA though. You can look at that, but sometimes they have different rules. I don't know if they have martial arts or not, but I know that they have a lot of other sports that.
Yeah. She was looking at playing field hockey in college.
Oh, yeah.
And being
my agent field hockey. She played at William & Mary, so.
That's cool.
Yeah, she just graduated a couple of years ago.
Well, that's fun. Yeah. So what got you into the whole insurance financial services field?
Well, it's interesting. I was many years ago, I worked for a personal and professional development company called PSI Seminars. And one of my good friends was one of the facilitators. And at the time I was running a volleyball club and down in San Diego. And he had called me and said, hey, I know you're kind of up in the air about what you're doing career-wise, if you're going to stick with a volleyball club or you're going to close it down. why don't you come on out and staff this class that I'm going to be in? I have some new people that are going to be around and I'd love to have your support. So I'm like, okay, I'll go out there and see what I can do. While I was out there, I met the CEO and founder of Appreciation Financial, and I just really liked what they were doing. They were working with school district employees and really serving the underserved. And since I was running the volleyball programs in a lot of the high schools down in the Chula Vista, Southern San Diego areas, I had a lot of connections. So I'm like, this would be a pretty good fit for me. I had done mortgages for about 8 years prior to starting the volleyball club. So I was pretty familiar with how finances worked and, what you needed to know to pass a test and all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of a natural fit for me to move into this business.
That's cool. Yeah. And like, what does financial services mean exactly?
Well, for me, we really work on retirement side. So we help people figure out what their gap's going to be. For most teachers, they have their pension. Most people who work in the school districts have a pension. So they have a pretty small income gap. They're just looking to save, enough money to fill their income gap. But somebody like you and me, maybe we have Social Security, maybe we have some savings in a different way. We're still going to have an income gap. And then that income gap can be filled by saving in, different products. Like, some people save in mutual funds, some people save in annuities, some people save in fixed accounts or even in life insurance. It just depends on what they have the most risk tolerance for and what's going to get them to accomplish their goals.
Very cool. So what are some of the most striking characteristics of entrepreneurs?
Well, I would say, we talk about this a lot in our book. For me, the number one thing I think, especially for women, is we need to have confidence. If we have confidence, it'll take us a long way. And it's not just about having that confidence in one moment. It's having confidence throughout everything that you're doing, because there's some stumbling blocks that come our way, right? So resiliency, being persistent, having courage and having humility. And then all of the other side of things, like the organization side of it, the time management. That's why I'm sure, I don't know if your daughter's still in college or she's in the workforce now, but if she isn't yet, some of those things that she had to persevere through getting to that level in her sport, whether it's field hockey or, martial arts, there's a lot that goes into having to really battle through whatever your mind is telling you. Right. Absolutely. So there's so many commonalities in being an entrepreneur and being an athlete and being able to take those traits and really, sports for girls especially gives them a lot of confidence. Helps them walk a little taller, right?
Absolutely, I agree. Yeah, that is my younger daughter. So she's 19 and she's a sophomore in college. So we're working on all of the time management skills and balancing being a pre-med biomed major with 2 internships and a work study and all that good stuff.
Wow, she's busy.
They all are. I mean, this is kind of one of the interesting things I think with, kids coming up through high school now is, especially kids that are college bound in a lot of ways, is that they are so hyper programmed and they have like all these balls in the air and they have to sell themselves so hard to get into college and then, get into whatever program in college, get into whatever school for whatever they want to study. Because just because you got admitted to a university doesn't mean that you're going to get into the program that you want to get into. Right.
Yeah, it's very competitive now.
And I was talking to one of the girls who was in my Girl Scout troop, who earned her Girl Scout Gold Award. She has a 3.4 GPA. She's had 3 computer science internships, and she's in the General College of Engineering, and they're telling her it's not enough.
Wow. Not enough. Yeah. Well, that can definitely burst your bubble and leave you with, knowing which way to turn and what way to go next. Right. Mm-hmm. So, I'm sure there's a place. She might not get her first choice, but I'm sure there's a place in one college. One thing that I learned when I was coaching kids in volleyball is if you want to get to your end result, medicine and some of those things that you've been talking about, it does matter a little bit more what college you go to. However, in my experience, I would say that the best thing about college is the relationships that you make. And
Absolutely.
so the relationships that you make can introduce you to, who your bosses are going to be, or who your first experience is going to be, or if you're going to go and start your own business, who are those people you're going to start that business with. So I think that's some of the important stuff. But I think the other thing that young kids don't realize is they know the big name schools, but there's so many other schools out there that offer really great programs that they may not look at because they might not be as big of a name. So I think in California, it's a little bit different than it is out on the East Coast, because there's so many schools in such a small area in the East Coast, where out here, we're very much spread out. Everybody wants to go to UCLA or USC, where that's only 2 schools. It's like out on the East Coast, even if you're just looking at Pittsburgh, how many schools there are just in Pittsburgh?
Well, but it is still a hyper-competitive environment here on the East Coast. One of the things that I've observed is that there's a lot of really amazing schools that don't have nearly as many students, but they're not as competitive necessarily to get into. It doesn't mean that it's a lesser program or produces lesser quality of students or graduates. But if you look at the Ivies or the near Ivies here, like Duke or Vanderbilt or Emory, I would say it's every bit as competitive to get into those schools as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, it has. It's gotten more and more competitive. And what's interesting is it's gotten way more competitive for women. Like 15, 20 years ago, it wasn't as competitive as it is now, because now more women are going to college at a faster rate than even the boys are. So, that's one of the great things about what we've been working for so long, Haley, is getting more women in the business world and getting them through college and stuff like that. But now look what we've created, this competition that is making it harder and harder for our girls to get into the schools they want to go to.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I think it's an interesting challenge, because when I was at NC State, it was 26% women. And now it's down into the low double digits. So about 11%, 12% women. And women are still having trouble getting into the programs.
That's interesting, because it's out here, a lot of the campuses have like 54% women now, where they used to be in the low 20s, like you were saying. Now they have 54% of women that go to college, where before we didn't have that. Like when I started playing sports back in the 80s, even in our book, we do a little tribute back to Title IX, because without Title IX, Carrie and I wouldn't have had half of the opportunities that we had. Title IX got completely enforced in the spring of '88, and I started college in the fall of '88. So by the time, it started way back in the '70s, and by the time it really got implemented and things were really starting to change in the schools, it wasn't until 1988 where, that really opened up opportunities for women to have their equal right to play, but also to get scholarships and whatnot that weren't available before. So, I mean, it does take a very full resume now for kids to get into school. And that's why sports are important, because if they do have that sports connection, then the coach can sometimes get them into the school where they otherwise wouldn't be able to get in.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, that's an interesting point, is that, sometimes you can get into Ivies or other schools with slightly lower test scores, but then you're also beholden to the school for basically doing the job you're being paid to do, which is to be an athlete.
Yeah. But I mean, there's a lot of really great characteristics and traits that they can learn, like the time management we're talking about. I mean, in our book, we talk about how when we were in college, that every piece of our schedule was mapped out, because when we would go away for tournaments or whatnot, we had to make sure that we didn't have classes on Fridays. We had to make sure that we were done with classes by 2:00. We need to make sure that we ate by a certain time, that we were in bed by a certain time, all these different aspects that helped us set up a routine, which continues for me to be something that I thrive on. When I have routine in my life and I have a schedule that I'm very strict and rigid with, I seem to do better in my business during those times where I'm very consistent on my schedule. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, it's great for, and our kids these days also, getting into college might be one of the first hard challenges that they do face, because it is much easier these days for kids than it was in the past as well. We do have, I have a 7-year-old, and that kid, he's he can find his way around an airport probably better than most 20-year-olds who've never experienced that. We've been to Mexico City. He's been to Hawaii a couple times. We were supposed to go on a cruise this last summer that got canceled, but when we get in the airport, he's like, okay, what gate are we at? And he'll take us to the gate. I really think that he could do a better job than our oldest son. Because our oldest son, he started traveling, he had his headphones on and he was already on his phone. This one, he doesn't have that, so he can get around a little bit more. But I do think that, if getting into college is the first thing that is the challenge for these kids these days, maybe it's a good thing that they have to have a little bit of adversity so that they can, learn how to deal with that.
Right. Well, and I think at least here we have challenge getting into private schools, and then it's a challenge to get into college. I mean, it just follows the whole way through, because private schools, at least here in North Carolina, are pretty selective.
You guys have some great schools there too. Everybody from out of state want to go to some of those schools as well.
Well, I'm talking about like high schools and junior highs and elementary schools are highly selective to get into as well. So it's not just at the college and the university levels. It's even in elementary school, there's some challenges with just getting into schools. But I agree that it's important to have that structure. And having had 3 kids now go through high school, my oldest one did not finish due to a traumatic brain injury, but having my younger daughter go through and all of the studying and the super scores for the SATs and all the college applications and the essays and all the extra tutoring that happens, it's really quite a process. I mean, it's a 4 to 5 year process that, preparation for college applications and then actually applying. It's nothing like it was when I was in college and in high school.
Yeah, I know. When we helped my oldest, he went to college before he joined the Navy, but he got a scholarship to do track and field at an AIA school out in Iowa. And then we learned within the first semester that college wasn't for him, so that's why he joined the Navy. But yeah, I mean, just he wasn't the greatest student, but he was an athlete, and so that was what got him in, because he was a really good athlete. But he didn't go to a big name school or anything. He went to a very small school in Des Moines, Iowa, which would have been a great fit for him because it had everything. It checked every box that he needed checked because he had some learning disabilities and whatnot. They had a program for that, which a lot of schools don't. So that was a really good fit for him. And that's one thing that I learned when I was a club and college coach, was how to help kids get into the right school for them. Because you can want to go to, like he could want to go to USC or UCLA or whatever. He would have never qualified to get into that school unless he went to like a junior college or something like that. But it also wouldn't have been a good fit for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, Beth, she says, am I seeing double? Hi, Haley. Hi, Hawley.
I know, Gray.
Yeah. Well, and what's really funny is that my maiden name is actually Wilson.
I know. We're so close.
So close. Oh my gosh. Yes.
One more letter in my first name than you do. So
exactly. It's fun. It cracked me up the first time I saw it. I was like, that's pretty funny. But yeah, no, I mean, I understand, the importance of getting into the right school, not just like any school. We've experienced that with my youngest son the whole way through, not just college, but like even middle school, making sure he's in the right elementary school, making sure he's in the right middle school. It's hard, and then it translates in life as well, as I'm seeing with the kids. and I saw with my life, it wasn't so much about, going to the perfect school, but it was going to the right school for me at the right time.
Yeah. That's how it was for me too. One of the things that we talk about in the book is really about our college experience. And for me, I went to 2 different colleges. I started at United States International University, which is a small private school in San Diego. They've since been bought out by Alliant International. And then after my junior year, they dropped the athletic program. So I transferred out to Arkansas State, and I had a completely different experience there. I mean, being in Jonesboro, Arkansas, which was like 50,000 people, and being from San Diego and living in San Diego, I go to this Arkansas small town, and it was still a dry county, and, I just turned 21. And so it was a culture shock, but it was a great experience. I wouldn't have traded it for anything, just because of the people that I met, and so many wonderful people while I was there. That really did, kind of goes back to that relationship thing. The coach that I had at Arkansas State, he's now at Florida State. He's very successful. His name's Chris Poole, and he's still a mentor to this day. I don't talk to him regularly anymore, but he definitely has given me some great advice. So,
yeah. Well, and I found that the relationships that I built in my undergraduate years and in my graduate school years made a big difference. But I think that it's the relationships you build all along the way, whether it's through volunteer work or through work or through associations or, former jobs. It's that foundational piece for life and business.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, there's definitely times in your life you can look back and you can say, this was a pivotal moment. Had I made a different decision, and we might not be talking about it right now. You know what I mean? So it's like,
absolutely.
We looked back at some of those, our book Push Through. We look back at some of those moments where we had to push through. Like, for example, when I went to college at Arkansas State, I was out there for preseason. Whoops, I just spilled my water. I was out there for preseason, and I got a call from my brother that my dad had passed away. And just 2 days prior to that, I was on the phone with my dad, planning him and my mom were coming out to watch me play. And so my mom had multiple sclerosis, and she'd been in a wheelchair since I was 14. So when I got home to go to my dad's funeral, I had to really take a look at, is it the best decision for me to go out and finish playing volleyball? Because who's going to take care of my mom? My brother was only 17. My sister, she's about 7 years older than me, but she had 2 toddlers, so she couldn't do it. So, I'm like, do I go back and finish the season and finish college there? Or do I transfer someplace out in California and go back home and take care of my mom? I chose to go back out and go to school and finish. But at the same time, it wasn't easy for any of us, because of those. And that's another reason why I got into the life insurance industry as well, because I have some great stories of how, when you don't have life insurance, what that can do to a family. So talk about knowing it firsthand. Like I said, my mom was sick and my dad died. So, those two
my
things.
mother had multiple sclerosis as well.
Really?
Yeah, she was diagnosed in 86.
Oh my goodness.
One of the first diagnoses in the state of Alabama. We moved from Rio de Janeiro to Florence, Alabama when I was 11, and then she was diagnosed a couple of years later. And then, so I understand that, that whole insurance and careers and choices. And I frequently wonder, because my dad was capable of taking care of her, what our lives would have looked like had something happened to him, or had the tables been turned where she was the one who had been the one that was okay, and he was the one with the disability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. There's definitely my mom was diagnosed in 73. So she actually, I have a friend now who I went to high school with, who's been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and she's been healthy pretty much the whole time. Here and there, she has little episodes, but it's nothing like my mom's experience at all, because the medication has gotten so much better. And my mom did a lot of the trials back in the 70s, late 70s and 80s. She actually went to Germany for like 6 weeks to go do some trial out in Germany. It didn't really help my mom, but luckily it helped generations after her to be able to, have a much healthier life with living with multiple sclerosis.
Yeah, my mother was in the beta trials for beta seron.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, a little bit later than your mom, because the diagnosis came in later, but my mother was symptomatic in the early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, not quite to the same extent that I think your mom was, but
my mom had a pretty progressive. It's a weird disease, they have different levels of, like, some people have very progressive where, like, they go downhill pretty quickly and they never experience remission, or they have like one episode and they can never have another episode again. It's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, my mother had a lot of episodes. We thought she had multiple strokes, which turned out to be multiple sclerosis over a period of years. And we had a period where she went blind in, I want to say 82, and completely lost both vision in both eyes.
Oh, wow.
And then it returned. And that's apparently pretty common with multiple sclerosis, but we didn't know it at the time. And then later what we thought were stroke symptoms in 85.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely is a tricky disease. And I've done a few of the 50-mile walks to help with the research. But man, it's just being a child, when going through that as a child, and then as an adult, being around a lot of people that have the disease now, it's definitely something that I'm passionate about helping. But it's not something that I want to expose myself to too much, because it's just so emotionally draining to put myself in a situation,
But it's also a good reminder of, this is why you need good disability insurance. Because
Yes.
it can happen. It does. And I mean, like, my mom went blind out of the blue. Your mother probably had, episodes that came on very suddenly, at least initially. And, your dad passing away, another reason for that life insurance piece.
Yeah, I mean, if my parents would have sat down with somebody like me when they were first married, because they got married pretty young. My mom was 18, my dad was 20. If they would have sat down with someone like me when they first had my sister a couple years into their marriage, they would have been able to, even for pennies on the dollar, they would have been able to have $250,000, $500,000 worth of coverage for, $17, $25 a month or something like that. And now there's life insurance you don't have to die to use that has living benefits. So my mom with a chronic illness would have been able to have some extra income coming in when she, got to a point where she couldn't feed herself or bathe, or, so eating, dressing, toileting, transferring, and
all the ADLs.
Yeah. So if you're not able to do 2 of the 6 daily functions for living, they pay you a certain percentage of the face amount and cash value that you have in the policy. And then, of course, with my dad, if he would have gotten a 30-year term when he was 25, he would have been, 10, 15 years into it when he passed away, and he would have left my mom with something to be able to live on, So there's definitely a place in every financial plan, in my opinion, for having that, because, unless you're wealthy and you can self-fund it yourself, then that's different. But that's very few and far between people. Most people need to rely on the fact that insurance can help them. I actually have 2 policies, because with the kind of living benefits insurance that you don't have to die to use, you can get that in a term policy. So I have that set up for my term policy, and then I have my permanent insurance that I'm funding for my retirement. So I can set up a tax-free retirement for the most part. Of course, you pay taxes on the money going in, but the money grows tax-free, and then when you take it out, it's a tax-free benefit. Yeah. So there's some, every plan is, every person has different needs, and every plan is different, but there's usually room in every plan for tax-free and tax-deferred savings. So that's something that we help people with as well.
Well, and it's important to do that as an entrepreneur, especially because we're ultimately responsible for our own retirement, for our own health insurance, for our own benefits, And even in my household, my husband is employed, and he carries life insurance through work, but it's not portable.
Right. Yeah, and what that means is that, you're not able to take it with you when you go, or if you do take it with you, then it's very expensive. And most people have that. Most people, most people that have work insurance, we always suggest that they get something outside of their work, because the other thing that happens is then you work for a company for 20 or 30 years or something like that. You retire, and then you're in your 60s, and you're not able to pay for the life insurance because it's too expensive, or long-term care, or whatever else you might need to pay for. Mm-hmm. Right now, I'm taking care of one of my friends. He has Alzheimer's, and I'll tell you what, he doesn't have anything in place, and he's going to get to a place where he's going to have to go into one of those state-ran. He lives in Texas. He's going to have to go into one of those state-ran facilities because he's just going to run out of money.
Right. So, well, and then the challenge with that, I did senior placement for 3 years, is that once you start to run out of money, you have to burn down to Medicaid. You have to burn through every single asset you have, which means that you can't leave anything for your children. And many of those facilities that are run and paid for by Medicaid pay very poorly, because Medicaid pays very poorly. So the facilities themselves are terrifying at times. Yeah. I mean, there's a few around here that are good, that if you get in when you still have assets and you burn down and whatnot, then you're fine. They're okay-ish, but it's hard, and they're few and far in between.
Yeah. And like I said, he has Alzheimer's. So, those of us that are helping with his care, we're making sure that he is taken care of as well as possible right now while he has all of his memories and all that kind of stuff. And as he continues to go down the Alzheimer's train, we'll see what that looks like going forward. So,
well, and memory care units are extremely expensive. Whether you're looking at a family care home or whether you're looking at a Medicaid facility, it doesn't matter. Medicare units, or not Medicare, memory care units are just crazy expensive.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so yeah, the value of that long-term care insurance, the value of that planning is huge as an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. Yeah, I recommend it.
Tell me a little bit about your launch.
Yeah, so tomorrow we're launching our book. It's at 12:30 Pacific Standard Time. We'll be on Facebook Live, LinkedIn Live, and YouTube. Our links are push through book, or just push through. And we have a LinkedIn, we have an Eventbrite. I don't know if you put it up there or not. I just did. We have an Eventbrite link that you can get an email, and then you'll get sent some information about how to connect with it. We're going to have a bartender. That's going to be fun. We're going to do some giveaways of our book and our journal. We have a companion journal called The Daily Push. And so it'll be from 12:30 Pacific Standard Time to 2:30 Pacific Standard Time. And, come in for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whenever you can jump on, or stay for the whole time. We will have some giveaways and some interviews. We interviewed 5 different people in the book. One was Mehran Asadi, who's the CEO of National Life Group. He's going to be on our launch tomorrow. And then Salima Rockwell, she's a very well-known volleyball player, and she was a coach at Penn State and the University of Texas, and now she's a sports announcer. She's going to be interviewed as well. And then we have a couple nonprofits that we're partnering with. One of them is Rock the Street, Wall Street, which it teaches women about the financial services industry and about how to, budget and do money and all that kind of stuff. So we will have videos from both of our nonprofits. The other nonprofit is Starlings Volleyball Club. So have to get back to the volleyball players as well.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. And where are people going to be able to find the book?
Well, the book will be on Amazon. We also we'll be up on Audible next week. Our audiobook will launch, and next week you should be able to find us on Amazon.
That's pretty amazing. Cool.
Very exciting. I definitely crossed that off my bucket list.
I got the book. I got the Audible. We're doing the launch. That is really freaking cool.
Thank you
for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So what is one piece of advice you'd like to leave our group members with?
Well, first of all, I would say for entrepreneurs, the only way you fail is if you quit. So, whatever your business is, don't quit. Find the resources that you need, whether that's a coach or support through this group or any other networking group that's out there that can help give you the support that you need. Because the only way that you fail is if you quit.
The only way you fail is if you quit. And hey, Farah. Yeah, I mean, I love that so much. The only way you fail is if you quit. Keep with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's amazing what that keeping with it and sticking with it through thick and thin, pushing through.
Pushing through. Exactly.
Get the book. It'll be awesome. Join the launch tomorrow. The Eventbrite is above in the links. Make sure you join us. It'll be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.